Overcoming rejection is honestly a big part of anyone's life, and that goes for both your personal life and your professional life too. However, the important part here is that when you overcome rejection, you are doing so in a manner that allows you to strive towards a more fulfilling profession and a more fulfilling life. And the reason I say this is so recently, having done my own personal job search, the average job search takes about 4 to 6 weeks. And that is according to a survey done by, it is Top Resume and Flex Jobs. And the time can be shortened, sure, based on how proactive you are, how much work you're doing beforehand to find the right jobs for yourself or to intentionally apply. But the ultimate thing here is that you will get rejected so many times. And that is an inevitable fact of life. There's a lot of things that you want to do, a lot of things that you're going to do that will result in some form of rejection. The thing that shortens any of these recovery periods, any of these ways of getting beyond that, is that ability to let rejection not be the point where you stop, but the point where you learn, adjust, and move forward. So keeping everything simple, let's talk about how to face rejection, maintain motivation, and move forward with intention. Welcome back to the Keeping Everything Simple podcast. I'm your host and fellow learner, Michael Klucas. And on this show, we boil down complex topics into simple, actionable tips. First and foremost, I do want to lead in with this saying that I ultimately believe that we all want jobs and careers that are personally fulfilling. And that's going to look a little bit different for everybody. My definition of what a fulfilling life is might be different than my neighbors, might be different than my coworkers, but ultimately I think that's something that we're all striving towards. And with only so many hours in the day, we want to dedicate our time and spend our time doing things that are important to us. And that's where this notion comes up of, and I mentioned this in the last podcast, so if you haven't seen that one, I recommend you go check that out too, of the difference between a hobby, a job, a career, and a vocation comes in. Because ultimately, what you're doing with your job is you are using that to pay your bills, to fund your life. And if you're lucky, or if you've been very intentional about it, your job is both interesting and fulfilling at the same time. And there's obviously going to be points in which that's not going to be the case all the time, because there's going to be highs and lows of every job, every choice you make, and that's okay. And when I say that's going to be the highs and lows of anything that you choose to do, that also means what rewarding means to you will change. And the way I want to kind of dive into that and dissect that a little bit more is think of where you're at right now. So your age, your profession, the chapter of your life that you're in, and consider what is the most important thing to you in this moment. In this current chapter, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What are you dedicating your time to, your free time to, and how does that make your life better? Because ultimately, when you're a teen, getting your first job, your motivation might just be, hey, I want to make money so I have my own funds to go to the movies with my friends, to take my girlfriend out on a date, to book a trip somewhere just for the weekend. And that's motivation there. And that's going to look different for the 22, 23, 24-year-old that's graduating university, where they're thinking, I'm launching my career, or I'm really getting into the workforce more fully. I want to have a job that both pays me well, I feel challenged and inspired by, and I can see a path to progression, versus when, say, you reach your mid-30s, your mid-40s, and at this point, when people start to settle down, have kids, the difference for everyone, of course, but it's when considering the 34-year-old who has a kid, a mortgage, car payments, bills to pay, and that's their idea of motivation and reward is going to be very different than the other two examples I gave. And this is why it's so important to be okay understanding that what's rewarding to you, it might have similar threads throughout everything, but at the same time, the actual ways in which you are finding that sense of reward, that sense of fulfillment, will adjust to the period and the piece of your life that you are in at that moment. Because there's the saying that it's different strokes for different folks, in which everyone is going to have their own motivation, their own way in which they work best, and the own ideas, essentially, of what a fulfilling life looks like and a fulfilling career looks like. Now, in facing rejection, it's hard because there's so many instances in which rejection can come at the most inopportune times. And that in of itself is super unfortunate, because you may be thinking that you're playing all the cards right, you're doing everything you're supposed to, and you get a rejection email. It says, hey, sorry, we decided to go or pursue other candidates, or sorry, your qualifications don't meet the requirements of this job, or you apply for a certain university program and you get rejected, or XYZ. It's so hard at those points in time because, again, you may feel that you're doing everything right, and you truly might be. However, just because you do everything right, it doesn't always mean that things are going to go the way you expect or the way you intend. And that is one of the hardest things to get accustomed to, or to navigate when you don't feel proficiently prepared for them, is the best way I can put that. But this is why I want to reiterate the fact that rejection should not be where you stop in terms of your own personal progress and your own development, because everything that happens will be essential fuel for your growth, your development, your understanding of who you are. And that's why it's so important that when you get those rejection emails, when you get those rejection letters, you take a moment to grieve the process, of course, because you don't want to just feel like, oh, I got the rejection letter, let me just throw it away, move on. The piece that makes it so important and so impactful is that you consider it and understand, well, what did I fall short on? How might I be able to improve this next time around? And what can I do next time to ensure that I'm getting one step closer to that goal I wanted? Now, not only does rejection feel kind of like a stop sign for a lot of pieces of your life, and for a lot of people too, it's understandable. But there's the other piece to the puzzle here, in which motivation can dwindle after rejection. And that's hard, because also just in general, motivation comes and goes. There's points where you're highly motivated, points where you have low motivation, and you still have to be able to put in the work during those times to be proactive. And that's why simplicity is key here. So if you're in the middle of your job search, if you're trying to get that promotion, the main thing is being very intentional about the how you're going about it and the why behind why you're pursuing that certain opportunity. So think of it like this. If you are trying to apply for a series of jobs, you don't want to just throw a bunch of applications out there, throw caution to the wind, and think that, hey, I'll take whoever gets back to me, because what may come your way may not be something that aligns with who you are, what you want to do, and where you want to go in the future. Because it's true that careers don't have to be linear anymore, sure, but you also, if you can, want to take the opportunities to craft a career that means something to you. And that means taking an intentional step beforehand and build your foundation by using the times of motivation, using those times of consistency to prep yourself for future success. And I just want to iterate again that getting rejected sucks. Like, it honestly, truly does. Especially when maybe you're banking all in on a certain job going your way or a certain application coming back, and like, all right, you're in. It sucks to be told no at those points in time. But this is going to be the theme of this as well. Overcoming rejection is that consistent factor. It's how consistent can you be in your process despite the setbacks. I love using the gym as an analogy, so I'm going to do it again. It's like whenever you reach a plateau in your training, in your progression, because you should be doing progressive overload to build muscle. Each week, you increase the weight depending on your experience level, a couple pounds, 5 pounds, 2 pounds, whatever it is, but you're increasing the weight and getting stronger every single week. And there's points where you may reach a plateau in which your strength isn't increasing. You're not feeling like you have the ability to go on to that next progressive overload session. And the thing is, you have to stay consistent and trust the process. You got to eat your protein. You got to still show up to the gym. Don't just go through the motions, but intentionally do your workouts, and you'll find progress at the end of that. It's just pushing through that plateau and making small adjustments and changes to your process. And I will say, originally I was going to make this video or this podcast really circle around the job search process, but as I go through this and the more I planned and the more I prep for it, the realization came to be that overall, rejection is something that we're all going to face at some point, and I want to dive into it a bit more because of that, in kind of using it as a broader scope, where what's going to work for that job search is going to work for your university application. It's going to work for, those, promotion opportunities and whatever else to come. So that's where I'm kind of making it a bit more broad. But what's important is that you're using the rejection as data. So that way you can adjust your approach accordingly and see the ways you can improve, the ways you can change up what you're doing to create a new result. Because the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And using what you learn should help you improve your process and from there improve your odds. Another important piece here, and this is about still gathering data, is there's a book called Let Your Life Speak by Parker Palmer, and it's all about vocation and your career and sense of fulfillment in your life. And one of the chapters in there is this idea of way closing, in which rejection or the door closing behind you on opportunity actually is a guidepost in the next phase of your life and the next phase of your journey, in which you aren't solemnly looking at the door and thinking of what could have been, all the what ifs. Instead, you are looking at that one, looking at the one before that, etc., and seeing how they're connected and how they're guiding you towards your next opportunity and the next place that you should go to. And it's a hard thing to adjust to at first, but it can be so impactful because a missed opportunity or a rejection can guide you in an entirely new direction that might be even better in the long run for you. Because rejection itself is simply a moment in time. It doesn't mean you're not worthy. It doesn't mean you're not able. It doesn't mean you can't do good work. It's a moment that you will get through, and you'll have to still pick yourself up and move forward from. So ultimately, what can you do with overcoming rejection? And I'm going to bring it all back here to the idea of consistency, because you've heard it before. You're probably a little tired of hearing it, but consistency is key. You're going to hear it in so many different ways, but the way to get good results is through consistent efforts, through consistent improvement, through consistent data analytics. There we go. But it's just being able to consistently say, this is what I want. My motivation's going to come and go at certain times. Like, it's not going to always be fun, but it's important to me, so I'm going to do it. It's like the idea of if you're trying to lose weight. So what's one of my goals for the year is to lose weight. And at the current moment, my goal of being consistent is I've got to wake up and I got to walk 5,000 steps first thing in the morning to make sure that I hit my minimum goal for the day of 7,000 by the end of the day. And that's one of those pieces I'm like, knowing that the work I'm putting in will result in a long-term benefit. And that's through consistency. The other side to the coin of motivation, or the coin of consistency, is the piece of motivation, which is actually still important, and I don't want to discredit that. But it comes down to the why behind everything. That will influence your motivation more than you can ever imagine. So it's Victor E. has a quote that says, "He who has a why to live can bear almost any how." And that's important to understand, because among the two sides of this coin, so consistency and that why, if you're able to marry those together in your decision making, that's going to accelerate the opportunities that are going to come your way, because you're going to be in a better frame of mind to recognize them when they do appear. And at the same time, align yourself on the paths that do lead you closer to the various opportunities that meet your expectations, meet the rewards that you feel inside, and help lead a fulfilling life and career. And again, it won't always be easy to pick yourself up after rejection. But the thing is, marrying together consistency, marrying together your why, do this, and rejection truly will become part of way closing and allow you to see what is next and where you've come from and where you're going. And comment down below if you're watching this on YouTube, how do you personally handle rejection? I know myself well enough to understand that it's not fun, but I have to stay consistent. And there's points where I'll let myself slip for a day, and that's okay, to take time to grieve rejection, but to still move forward. So comment down below, what are ways that you have handled rejection in the past and done so with intention and mindfulness. And I hope with the end of this episode that you have found some reassurance that it's okay to face rejection, but ways as well to strive to do better, and so that next time you're giving yourself a much better chance at succeeding. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the podcast. It helps other people discover the show and helps us grow. If you're listening to this on a podcast app of choice, make sure that you are leaving us a rating. It helps boost the show as well, and I would appreciate it so much. Keeping everything simple. Have an amazing day, you amazing people, and I will see you all in the next episode. So go out there and do great things.